Victoria Ashford stood in the grand foyer of the $8 million Mediterranean estate, her Cartier watch catching the afternoon light as she assessed the man before her. Faded jeans, a flannel shirt worn soft at the elbows, work boots caked with dried mud. Beside him, a little girl clutched his hand, her eyes wide as saucers as she took in the vaulted ceilings and sweeping ocean views. Victoria offered her most polished smile, the one she reserved for situations requiring delicate dismissal. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "but this property isn't quite suited to your budget." The man looked down at his daughter, then back at Victoria. His expression remained utterly calm. "I'll buy it cash." Victoria laughed, certain this was a joke. Then she saw his eyes. 3 hours earlier, a dust-covered Ford F-150 had rumbled into the coastal town of Carmel by the Sea. The truck looked decidedly out of place among the Mercedes sedans and Tesla SUVs that lined the quaint streets, its paint faded from years of sun and honest work. Behind the wheel sat Nathan Cole, 38 years old, with calloused hands and sawdust still clinging to the cuffs of his flannel shirt. In the passenger seat, 7-year-old Emma pressed her nose against the window, watching the boutique shops and art galleries drift past like scenes from a storybook she had never quite believed could be real. "Daddy," she said, her voice carrying that particular mixture of hope and hesitation that children master when they want something desperately but fear disappointment. "Will the new house look like Mommy's painting?" Nathan glanced at the watercolor propped carefully between them on the bench seat. Sarah had painted it during her final months, working through the fatigue and the pain because she said the picture needed to exist. It showed a house perched on coastal cliffs, with a garden full of wildflowers and a balcony that seemed to float above the Pacific Ocean. In the painting, 3 figures stood on that balcony, tiny and indistinct but unmistakably a family, watching something magnificent in the water below. "We're going to find out, sweetheart," Nathan said. He reached over and squeezed her small hand. "That's why we're here." They parked in front of a building with gold lettering on the window that read Ashford and Associates, luxury real estate since 1978. Nathan had done his research thoroughly. This firm handled the most exclusive properties on the Central Coast, including one particular listing that had stopped his heart when he first saw it online 3 weeks ago. A Mediterranean villa on the cliffs of Carmel, with an art studio that caught the northern light, and a terrace where, according to the description, gray whales could be spotted during their winter migration. Sarah's painting come to life. He hadn't made an appointment. Appointments felt like asking permission, and Nathan had learned long ago that permission was something other people decided you needed based on how you looked, how you spoke, what car you drove. He'd rather just show up and see what happened. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect posture and a practiced smile, looked up as they entered. She took in the scene before her. A man in working clothes, sawdust on his cuffs, holding the hand of a little girl with a butterfly backpack. Her eyes traveled from Nathan's worn boots to Emma's face, and something in her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Good afternoon," she said, her tone professionally neutral. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Nathan replied. "I'd like to see a property, the villa on Ridgecrest Drive, the $8 million listing." Before the receptionist could respond, a door opened behind her and a woman emerged, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in the confident tones of someone accustomed to closing deals. Victoria Ashford was 31 years old, ambitious beyond her years, and already the top-performing agent at her father's firm. She wore a cream blazer that probably cost more than Nathan's truck payment, her blonde hair swept into an elegant twist. She glanced at Nathan and Emma with the quick, dismissive assessment of someone who had learned to categorize people by net worth within seconds of meeting them. She covered the phone's microphone. "Elena," she called to someone in the back office, "handle the walk-in, would you?" Then she disappeared into a conference room. A moment later, another woman appeared. She was a few years older than Victoria, with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her smile, when she approached them, reached all the way to her eyes. "Hi there," she said, crouching down to Emma's level. "That's the cutest backpack I've ever seen. I love butterflies." Emma clutched the straps, suddenly shy. "My mommy gave it to me. She has great taste." The woman straightened and extended her hand to Nathan. "I'm Elena Martinez. How can I help you today?" But before Nathan could answer, Victoria reappeared, phone now tucked away. She'd apparently heard him mention the Ridgecrest property, and an $8 million commission was not something she delegated to junior agents. At 31, Victoria had already built a reputation for closing the biggest deals on the Central Coast. She wasn't about to let this one slip through her fingers, even if the client looked like he'd wandered in from a construction site. "I'll take it from here, Elena." Victoria's smile was bright and utterly impersonal. "Mr. Cole wants to see the Ridgecrest villa." As they walked to the door, Emma tugged on Nathan's sleeve and whispered, loud enough for Elena to hear but not Victoria, "Daddy, this office is pretty, but that lady doesn't smile with her eyes." Victoria drove her Porsche Cayenne, while Nathan and Emma followed in the dusty F-150. Through her rearview mirror, Victoria watched the old truck navigate the winding coastal roads and shook her head slightly. She'd seen this before. Dreamers who wanted to tour homes they could never afford, who thought that walking through marble foyers might somehow manifest a different financial reality. She'd show them the property, answer their questions politely, and send them on their way. It was simply part of the job, even if it was a waste of her afternoon. The villa revealed itself gradually as they climbed Ridgecrest Drive, appearing first as a terracotta roofline above the cypress trees, then emerging in full Mediterranean splendor. White stucco walls, arched windows, a garden that tumbled down the hillside in waves of lavender and rosemary, and beyond it all, the Pacific Ocean stretched to the horizon, vast and eternal, glittering like scattered diamonds. Emma was out of the truck before Nathan had fully stopped, running toward the terrace that wrapped around the cliffside of the house. He caught up to her at the railing, where she stood transfixed, the wind lifting her hair as she stared at the water far below. "Daddy," she breathed. "Mommy was right. You can see where the whales swim from here." Nathan knelt beside her, his throat tight. "Yeah, baby, you can." Victoria approached, checking her phone. The property features 5 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, approximately 6,000 square feet. The current owners are relocating to Europe, though I should mention we've had considerable interest from qualified buyers. The emphasis on qualified was unmistakable. Nathan stood. "My wife was an artist," he said, surprising himself with the words. "She painted a picture of a house like this before she passed. A house where you could watch the whales from the bedroom." Victoria's expression flickered. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said automatically. Then her phone buzzed. "Shall we continue the tour?" She led them through the house with efficient disinterest, pointing out the custom millwork and imported tile while checking her messages. The kitchen with its La Cornue range, the primary suite with its fireplace and ocean views. Nathan noticed that she addressed all her comments to him, barely acknowledging Emma's existence. Victoria was young, driven, focused on the transaction. She had not yet learned that the smallest clients sometimes carried the biggest surprises. Then Emma found the art studio. It was a separate room on the north side of the house, with floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with clear, even light. Built-in shelves lined the walls, waiting for supplies. An easel stood in one corner, left behind by the previous owners. "Daddy," Emma's voice echoed in the empty room. "Mommy would love this place." She ran to the windows, pressed her palms against the glass, then fell silent. When she turned around, her eyes were bright with tears. "I mean, she would have loved it." Nathan crossed the room and gathered her into his arms, holding her while she pressed her face against his shoulder. He stroked her hair and murmured quiet words meant only for her. Words about how her mother was watching, how she would always be with them, how some kinds of love don't end just because someone isn't there to hold your hand anymore. Victoria stood in the doorway, watching. For a moment, something complicated moved across her face. She was young enough to remember loss, old enough to have built walls against it. Then her phone buzzed again, and the moment passed. "Well," she said when Emma had composed herself, "I think you've seen everything. The property is priced at $8 million, and I'd be happy to suggest some properties in a more accessible range if you'd like to continue your search." That was when Nathan noticed that Emma had set something on the windowsill. Sarah's painting, carefully propped against the glass, the watercolor house overlapping with the real view beyond it. His daughter had claimed this space, marked it as theirs, with the same quiet certainty she'd shown when she first declared that her mother lived now in the stars. Victoria noticed it too, her brow furrowed slightly, but she didn't comment. They returned to the main foyer, where October sunlight streamed through the arched windows. Victoria clasped her hands in front of her, adopting the posture of someone preparing to wrap up an encounter. "Mr. Cole, I want to be transparent with you. This property has attracted significant attention from serious buyers. The qualification process is quite rigorous. Perhaps I could show you some charming condos near downtown that might better suit your needs." Nathan felt Emma's hand tighten in his. His daughter had heard the dismissal in Victoria's voice, even if she didn't fully understand it. Children always sensed when adults thought they didn't belong. "I want this house," Nathan said simply. Victoria's smile tightened. "I understand the appeal, but we're talking about $8 million. Perhaps if you could share some details about your financial situation, I could better guide you toward appropriate options." "I told you," Nathan said. "I'll pay cash." A small laugh escaped Victoria. "Mr. Cole, a cash purchase of this magnitude requires verification, bank statements, proof of liquid assets." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened an app, tapped in a code, and held the screen out toward Victoria. She took it automatically, glancing down with the expression of someone humoring a child who insists they've found buried treasure. The expression froze on her face. The screen displayed an account summary from Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management. The number at the bottom read $43,726,541.89. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted from the screen to Nathan's worn flannel shirt, his muddy boots, his calloused hands. At 31, she thought she had seen everything in the real estate business. She had not seen this. She began. "Mr. Cole, I had no idea. Please forgive me. This is wonderful news. I can begin the paperwork immediately. I'll even waive the commission as a gesture of good faith." "Thank you," Nathan interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "But I'd prefer to work with Miss Martinez." Victoria blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Elena," Emma said, looking up at her father. "I like Elena better. She smiles with her eyes." The silence that followed was profound. Victoria stood frozen, her practiced composure finally cracking. In 8 years of selling real estate, she had never been dismissed by a client. She had certainly never been dismissed by a client she had just finished dismissing herself. "Mr. Cole, I assure you, I can provide superior service. My experience with properties of this caliber is extensive. Elena is quite new to the firm." Nathan retrieved his phone. "I'm sure you're very good at your job, but my daughter and I will be more comfortable with Elena." He took Emma's hand. "We'll wait outside while you make the call." They left Victoria standing alone in the $8 million foyer, her reflection caught in the polished marble floor. For the first time in her career, she understood what it felt like to be judged by the wrong criteria. She had looked at Nathan Cole and seen faded denim and work boots. She had not seen a father keeping a promise to his dying wife. She had not seen him at all. Elena Martinez was reviewing paperwork at her small desk when her phone rang. Victoria's voice on the other end was clipped and strange, tight with an emotion Elena couldn't quite identify. "The client from this afternoon," Victoria said. "He's asked for you specifically. He wants to buy the Ridgecrest property." Elena nearly dropped the phone. "The $8 million listing? Are you sure?" "I'm sure." A pause. "Don't mess this up." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, Elena sat across from Nathan and Emma at a small cafe on Ocean Avenue. Emma was drawing on a paper placemat with crayons, her tongue poking out in concentration. Nathan cradled a cup of black coffee, watching his daughter with the particular intensity of a parent who has learned not to take ordinary moments for granted. "I'm confused about what happened back there," Elena said. "Victoria isn't usually one to hand off clients." "She didn't hand us off," Nathan replied. "I asked for you." "Why?" He considered the question. "You talked to Emma. You saw her backpack and asked about it. You looked at her like she was a person, not an inconvenience. That matters to me." Elena felt her cheeks warm. It shouldn't be remarkable to treat a child kindly. It shouldn't be. But it is. Emma looked up from her drawing. "Your eyes are like Mommy's eyes," she announced to Elena. "They're thinking eyes. Mommy always said thinking eyes are the best kind because they mean someone's paying attention." "Your mommy sounds like she was very wise," Elena said. "She was an artist," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "She painted pictures of beautiful things, and she painted our dream house before she went to live with the stars. Daddy's buying the dream house now because he promised her." Elena looked at Nathan, understanding dawning. "The studio. That's why you want the house." He nodded. "Sarah always wanted a space like that, somewhere with good light where she could paint the ocean." His voice roughened slightly. "She never got to see it. But Emma will. Emma will have the studio, and Sarah's painting will hang on the wall where it belongs." For a moment, Elena couldn't speak. She thought of her own son, Diego, and the promises she'd made to him when his father left. "What do you need from me?" she asked finally. "Just handle the paperwork. I want to close within 2 weeks if possible. The funds will transfer as soon as the documents are ready, and I want the studio left exactly as it is." Elena pulled out a small notebook and began writing. "What else?" Nathan hesitated. Then he asked, "What does Emma like about the house?" Elena smiled. "She likes the balcony because her mom told her whales like to swim by in winter." "December," Emma chimed in, without looking up from her drawing. "Mommy said the gray whales come in December. They swim all the way from Alaska." "That's right," Elena said. "The gray whale migration runs from December through April. I heard that last year, a mother and calf spent almost an hour feeding right below the cliffs." Emma's face lit up. "Daddy, did you hear? Baby whales." Nathan's eyes were bright. "I heard, sweetheart." When Emma ran outside to look at the seabirds, Nathan turned to Elena. "Thank you. You're the first person who's asked what she wants. Everyone else looks at the money, at the transaction, but Emma's the reason we're here." Elena thought of nights working late as a teacher and still couldn't make rent, of reinventing herself at 34 because single motherhood demanded flexibility. "I understand more than you might think," she said. Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between them. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. The recognition of two people who had walked similar roads and emerged scarred, but still standing. Nathan Cole was 35 years old when his life changed twice in 6 months. The first change came on a Tuesday afternoon in a glass-walled conference room in San Francisco, where lawyers gathered to finalize the acquisition of his company. CyberShield Solutions, the network security startup he'd co-founded in his garage 5 years earlier, was being purchased for $47 million. He remembered sitting at that table, signing document after document, watching the zeros multiply. He remembered calling Sarah on his way home, hearing her laugh with disbelief. "Does this mean you'll finally fix the squeaky step on the porch?" He'd fixed it that weekend, just to hear her laugh again. The second change came on a Friday morning in a doctor's office that smelled of antiseptic. Sarah sat beside him, still wearing the paint-stained jeans she'd had on when the headaches finally drove her to seek answers. The neurologist explained the MRI results. Glioblastoma, stage 4, aggressive, inoperable. They'd been given 6 months. Sarah made it 8. Nathan spent every dollar that might have made a difference. The best oncologists at Stanford and UCSF. Experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. A clinical trial in Houston. He would have spent every penny for one more day of watching Sarah paint in the morning light, of hearing her sing off-key while she made pancakes. But money couldn't buy time. Money couldn't stop the cancer cells from multiplying. Money couldn't keep her hand from growing cold on that final spring night when the morphine finally carried her somewhere the pain couldn't follow. Before she slipped away, Sarah had finished one last painting: a house on the cliffs, a garden of wildflowers, a balcony overlooking the sea, 3 figures watching whales in the distance. "Promise me," she'd whispered. "Promise me Emma will grow up somewhere she can dream, somewhere she can see the whales." Nathan had promised. After Sarah died, he couldn't bear to stay in the house they'd shared. He sold it, moved with Emma to a small bungalow where no one knew his name or his bank balance. He wore his old clothes because new ones felt like betrayal. He drove his old truck because it still smelled faintly of Sarah's perfume. He spent his days renovating by hand because the physical labor kept his mind quiet. For 2 years, he and Emma existed in a cocoon of grief and healing. He learned to braid her hair the way Sarah used to. He learned to make the chocolate chip pancakes that had been her mother's specialty. He learned to answer the questions that came at unexpected moments. Where did Mommy go? Does she miss me? Will I see her again? And slowly, Emma began to carry Sarah's painting with her, to school, to the grocery store, to bed, maintaining a visual connection to a promise not yet kept. 3 weeks ago, Nathan stumbled across the Ridgecrest listing. He'd stared at the photographs for a long time, his heart pounding. The terrace, the garden, the studio, the view. Sarah's painting made real. Now, sitting across from Elena while his daughter drew pictures of their future home, Nathan found himself sharing the story. Not the financial details, but the important parts. Sarah's illness, her final wish, the painting, the promise. Elena listened without interrupting. When he finished, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm a single mom," she said quietly. "My ex-husband left when Diego was 6. He said he wasn't cut out for fatherhood, like it was a hobby he could just put down." She took a breath. "I know what it's like to be both parents, to answer the questions that don't have good answers." Nathan nodded slowly. "Then you understand." "I understand." They sat in silence for a moment, 2 people who had found unexpected common ground in the landscape of loss and perseverance. Outside, Emma laughed at something, the sound carrying through the cafe's open door like wind chimes. "Let's get you that house," Elena said. The following Monday, Elena presented the offer to Harold Ashford, Victoria's 71-year-old father and founder of the firm. Harold had built the firm from nothing 4 decades earlier, and he still reviewed every significant transaction. His daughter was talented, driven, the heir apparent to the business he'd spent his life building. But sometimes he worried she had learned the wrong lessons from his success. This offer made him sit up straighter. $8 million cash, he said, reading Elena's summary. Nathan Cole, formerly of CyberShield Solutions. He looked up. Victoria was handling this listing. "Yes, sir. But the client requested me specifically." "Did he say why?" Elena hesitated. "I believe he felt more comfortable working with me." Harold studied her. After 40 years in real estate, he'd developed an instinct for the stories people didn't tell. "I'd like to meet him." Before we proceed, the meeting took place 2 days later in Harold's private office. Nathan arrived in his usual attire of worn jeans and flannel, his work boots leaving faint traces of sawdust on the antique carpet. Harold rose to greet him, and something flickered across the older man's face. Recognition of a type. "Mr. Cole, please, sit down." They shook hands. Nathan noticed that Harold's grip was firm and calloused, the hand of someone who hadn't always sat behind a desk. "When Elena showed me your file, I was curious," Harold said. "Not about the money. I was curious about you. You look like I did 40 years ago. When I showed up to sign my first real estate contract wearing work boots and a borrowed shirt because mine had a hole in it." Nathan smiled slightly. "Did they give you a hard time about it?" "They tried not to sell to me. Said I didn't fit the neighborhood's character." Harold's eyes grew distant. I was fresh off the boat from Ireland. Thick accent. No connections. Just a dream of building something in America. You remind me of that young man everyone underestimated. Your daughter underestimated me, Nathan said. There was no accusation in his voice, only statement of fact. Harold sighed. I know. She told me what happened. I'm sorry for how you and your daughter were treated. I'm not here for an apology. Then why are you here? Nathan considered the question. Because you asked to meet me, and because I wanted to see what kind of man raised someone like Victoria, and someone like Victoria who might be willing to admit she'd been wrong. Nathan leaned forward. I don't care about the slight, Mr. Ashford. I've been underestimated my whole life. But my daughter was there, my 7-year-old daughter who just lost her mother, and Victoria looked right through her like she wasn't even human. Harold was quiet for a long moment. I built this company on a simple principle. Everyone deserves a chance to own their dream. Doesn't matter what they're wearing when they walk through the door. I told Victoria that story 100 times when she was growing up. He shook his head. She's young, ambitious. Sometimes the young forget what matters most in their rush to succeed. But that's no excuse. Apparently, she forgot. What are you going to do about it? What would you suggest? Nathan thought about it. Let Elena handle the sale. She's earned it. As for Victoria, that's between you and your daughter. I just want to buy a house for my little girl. Harold stood and shook his hand firmly. You'll have it, Mr. Cole. I'll make sure of it. Harold walked Nathan to the door personally, something he rarely did anymore. At the threshold, he paused. Your wife sounds like she was a remarkable woman. Nathan nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She was. That evening, Harold called Victoria into his office. She arrived expecting congratulations on a quarterly target. Instead, she found her father with an expression that made her feel like a child again. Sit down, Harold said. It wasn't a request. Victoria sat. Tell me about Nathan Cole. The question caught her off guard. The buyer for Ridgecrest? His funds verified. Elena's handling the closing. Is there a problem? You tell me. Victoria's composure flickered. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, Harold said slowly, that I just spent an hour with a man who paid $47 million for his company, who dresses like a carpenter because he doesn't care about impressing people, who's buying an $8 million house so his motherless daughter can watch whales the way his dead wife always dreamed. He leaned forward, and he told me that my daughter looked at that little girl like she was an inconvenience. Victoria's face went pale. Daddy, the situation was complicated. He showed up without an appointment, dressed like a handyman. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to think that every person who walks through our door deserves respect until they prove otherwise. Harold's voice was quiet but carried the weight of decades. Do you know why I started this company, Victoria? Because you loved real estate. Because when I came to this country at 19 years old, nobody would sell me a house. Not the banks. Not the agents. They looked at my accent, my clothes, and they decided I didn't deserve a place to call home. Harold's eyes grew bright. I built Ashford and Associates so that nobody would ever feel that way again. Victoria's throat worked. I didn't mean to, but you did. You judged a grieving father and his little girl by their shoes. Harold walked to the window. I've spent 40 years building something I'm proud of. And in one afternoon, you made me wonder if I passed any of that meaning to my own daughter. You're 31 years old, Victoria. Old enough to know better. Young enough to change. Daddy, Victoria's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I know you are. Now you need to make sure that little girl knows it too. Meanwhile, in a sunny corner of Elena's small office, Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by crayons and paper. Nathan and Elena sat nearby, reviewing the final documents for the house purchase. This one's for you, Emma announced, holding up her creation. Elena took the drawing carefully. It showed a house on a cliff, with blue water stretching to the edge of the paper. On the balcony stood 3 figures, a tall one with brown hair, obviously Nathan, a small one with a butterfly backpack, and a third figure with dark hair and a yellow dress, holding hands with the other 2. That's me, Emma explained. And that's Daddy. And that's you. Elena felt her heart catch. It's beautiful, sweetheart. But why am I in the picture? Emma shrugged. Because you helped us find the house. And because you're nice. And because Mommy always said good things happen when nice people help each other. Nathan looked at the drawing, then at Elena. Something passed between them, unspoken but understood. We should frame that, Nathan said quietly. Down the hall, Victoria stood frozen outside Elena's office door. She had come to deliver a message from her father, but she'd stopped when she saw through the small window the scene unfolding inside. Elena, laughing at something Emma said. Nathan watching them both with an expression of tentative hope. Emma holding up her drawing like a treasure. This was what Victoria had almost destroyed. Not just a business transaction, but a family reaching toward healing. She had looked at them and seen nothing but faded jeans and dusty boots. She had not seen love. She had not seen grief. She had not seen courage. She had been blind. Victoria took a breath and knocked on the door. The closing took place on a Tuesday morning in the main conference room of Ashford and Associates. Harold presided, though he let Elena handle most of the paperwork. Nathan signed page after page. Emma sat beside him, clutching Sarah's painting. When the final signature was complete and the wire transfer confirmed, Harold stood and shook Nathan's hand. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. The house is yours. Emma let out a small cheer, then covered her mouth, embarrassed. The adult smiled. Then Victoria stepped forward. Mr. Cole, could I speak with you privately for a moment? Nathan nodded. Elena took Emma's hand. Let's go get some hot chocolate, sweetie. Alone in the conference room, Victoria and Nathan faced each other. Then Victoria did something that didn't come naturally to her driven, ambitious nature. She apologized, without making excuses. I treated you and your daughter badly. I judged you based on how you looked, and I was wrong. There's no explanation that makes that acceptable. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Nathan studied her face. She was young, he realized. Young and still learning. I don't need your apology. I know. But Emma might need to hear it. My father told me something I can't stop thinking about. He said children remember how adults make them feel long after they forget what those adults said. And I made your daughter feel invisible. Yes, you did. I'd like to apologize to her, if you'll let me. Nathan was quiet. Then he said, Emma believes in second chances. Her mother taught her that. She says everyone has bad days, and good people try to be better after bad days. Are you trying to be better? I don't know, Victoria admitted, but I want to try. When Elena returned with Emma, Victoria crouched down until she was at eye level with the little girl. Emma regarded her warily. Emma, Victoria said softly, when you and your daddy came to see me, I wasn't very nice. I didn't smile at you. I didn't ask about your beautiful backpack or your mommy's painting. And that was wrong. Emma tilted her head. Daddy says you were having a bad day. I was. But that's not an excuse. Everyone has bad days, but that doesn't mean we get to be unkind. Victoria's voice caught. I'm sorry I wasn't kind to you, Emma. You deserved better. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my mommy used to say that sorry is just the beginning. After sorry comes trying harder. Your mommy was right. Emma smiled, and it was like watching the sun emerge from behind clouds. Okay, I forgive you. Victoria blinked rapidly. She hadn't expected absolution from a 7-year-old to hit her so hard. But there it was, freely given. A lesson in grace from someone who had barely learned to read. Harold cleared his throat. One more piece of business. Elena, effective immediately, you're being promoted to Director of Residential Properties. Elena's mouth fell open. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes. Thank you. Victoria nodded, accepting the implicit rebuke. Her father was telling her, in the clearest possible terms, that she had failed a test she hadn't known she was taking. She would have to earn back his trust, earn back her place. It would take time. But as she watched this little family walk out into the October sunshine toward their new beginning, Victoria felt something unexpected. Not resentment, not jealousy, hope. That maybe, at 31, She was still young enough to learn to see people the way Elena did, the way Emma did, the way her father had always wanted her to. 6 weeks later, on a December morning crisp with salt air and possibility, Emma Cole burst through the glass doors of her new home and raced toward the terrace. Her bare feet slapped against the terracotta tiles, her butterfly backpack bouncing with each stride. Behind her, Nathan followed at a more measured pace, coffee cup in hand, heart full of something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. "Daddy, hurry!" Emma shouted. "They're here! They're really here!" He reached the terrace just as his daughter climbed onto the lower rung of the railing, stretching up on her toes to see over the edge. And there, perhaps 100 yards offshore, a column of mist rose against the morning sky. Then another, and another. Gray whales. A whole pod of them, making their ancient journey from Alaska to Baja California, just as they had done for thousands of years. "Look," Emma breathed. "Look, Daddy. Mommy was right." Nathan set down his coffee and lifted Emma into his arms so she could see better. They watched together as the whales surfaced and dove, their dark backs gleaming in the early light. "She was right about a lot of things," Nathan said, his voice rough. "She was right about this house. She was right about the whales. She was right about you. What did she say about me? She said you were going to be brave and kind and full of wonder." He kissed the top of her head. She was right about that too. They stood there until the pod moved on, until the spouts of mist faded into the distance. Then Emma wriggled down from Nathan's arms and announced that she needed to paint what she had seen. The studio had been left exactly as Nathan requested, untouched except for the addition of new supplies. Child-sized easels, washable paints, brushes with comfortable grips for small hands, and in the place of honor, hanging on the wall where the northern light illuminated it perfectly, Sarah's final painting. Emma stood before it for a long moment, studying her mother's brushstrokes. Then she picked up a brush of her own and began to work. Nathan watched from the doorway, memories washing over him. Sarah in this exact pose, standing before a canvas, utterly absorbed in her work. The way she'd hum without realizing it, the way she'd tilt her head when she was thinking. Emma did all of those things. Sarah's gestures, passed down through love and genetics, living on in their daughter. The doorbell rang, breaking his reverie. Elena stood on the front step, a wrapped gift under one arm and a bottle of wine in her hand. "Housewarming present," she said. "The book is for Emma. It's about gray whales. The wine is for you, though I remember you said you only drink black coffee." Nathan laughed, surprising himself with the sound. "Come in. Emma will want to show you her studio." They found Emma standing before her easel, paintbrush in hand, entirely covered in blue and gray splatters. Her canvas showed a house on a cliff, whales in the water, and figures on the balcony. But this time, there were 4 figures, not 3. 2 adults, 1 child, and a smaller figure painted in softer strokes, almost translucent. "That's Mommy," Emma explained when Elena asked. "She's watching from where the angels live, but she wanted to be in the picture anyway." Elena knelt down beside her. "It's perfect, Emma. Your mom would love it." "I know," Emma said with simple confidence. "That's why I painted it." Later, after they'd ordered pizza and Elena had read Emma 3 chapters from the whale book, after the sun had set and the stars had emerged and Emma had fallen asleep on the couch with her butterfly backpack clutched to her chest, Nathan and Elena stood on the terrace together. "Thank you," Nathan said, "for everything, not just the house, for seeing us when we needed to be seen." "You would have found your way regardless," Elena replied. "You're a good father." "I'm trying to be." He paused, looking out at the dark ocean. Sarah used to say that the hardest part of parenting alone is having no one to share the small moments with. The first steps, the first words, the ordinary Tuesday evenings that somehow become precious memories. He glanced at Elena. Diego's father missed all of that. He did. His loss. "Emma drew you in her picture, the one with the figures on the balcony." Elena nodded slowly. "I saw. She doesn't do that lightly. She's very particular about who she includes in her world." "What are you saying, Nathan?" He turned to face her fully. "I'm saying that if you wanted to, if you were open to, I'm saying I'd like to see you again, outside of paperwork and closings and housewarming visits." He exhaled. "I'm saying that my daughter has good instincts about people, and she likes you, and I'm starting to think I might like you too." Elena was quiet for a long moment. The ocean murmured below them, eternal and patient. "I'd like that," she finally said. "But let's go slow. We both have kids. We both have baggage." "Fair enough. Slow it is." They stood together in comfortable silence, two single parents on the edge of something tentative and new. Later that night, after Elena had gone home and Emma had been carried to bed with her butterfly backpack still clutched tight, Nathan sat alone on the terrace. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by city lights. The waves whispered their ancient secrets to the shore. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo album he rarely allowed himself to view. Sarah at their wedding, radiant in white. Sarah on the day Emma was born, exhausted and glowing and perfect. Sarah in her studio, brush in hand, paint on her cheek, laughing at something he'd said. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered to the stars. "We made it. The house looks just like your painting. Emma saw the whales this morning. She's painting in your studio now, using your easel, following in your footsteps." The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of salt and sage. "I met someone," he continued. "It's nothing yet. Maybe it won't be anything. But she's kind, Sarah. She's kind and she sees Emma, really sees her, and she makes me feel like maybe I don't have to do this alone forever." He paused, throat tight. "I hope that's okay. I hope you know that I'll never stop loving you. That Emma will always know who her mother was. That this house will always be your dream as much as ours." The stars glittered, silent and eternal. "I'm going to be okay," Nathan said. "Emma's going to be okay. We're going to be okay." A shooting star traced a brief arc across the sky, there and gone in an instant. Nathan smiled. In his family, shooting stars had always meant someone was listening. He sat there for a long time, wrapped in the night and the memories and the quiet certainty that some promises, once kept, open the door to new promises yet to be made. The ocean sang its endless song below the cliffs. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance. And somewhere in the darkness, in a place beyond pain and loss, and the terrible mathematics of mortality, he believed with his whole heart that Sarah was smiling.